action. You're back at the Friday Night Chips apparatus in the Wednesday Night Sports Talk Octagon. And the Friday Night Chips apparatus is on the march. And I want these guys to know, you know what Napoleon's saying to his marshals of France was? When you set out to take Vienna, take Vienna. And this is the hostile takeover of sports media. That's why we need this audience maniacally focused. It's going to get blurry in the fog of war. And listen, I'm giving 110%. Bishaw's giving 110%. But we need this audience maniacally focused. Stand in the breach. Put your shoulder to the wheel. Use your human agency. And now we're going to get into the action. It's going to be a sports talk octagon throwdown on NBA super teams. We're going to get to the bottom of all of it. And the players, the athletes won't be able to hide. So let's go ahead and introduce these guests. Bishaw, you got anything to say?
No, I'm just excited for this one. Go ahead and introduce your boys, man.
Number one, we got the great Matt Palazzi, a very intelligent individual. Now, Matt, I want you to understand, this is the Sports Talk Octagon throwdown. This ain't the Penn Faculty Lounge. This ain't the Harvard Faculty Lounge. Are you willing to be in a street fight?
Bring it on, Jared. I want everything.
I like that.
Okay. Then we got the great Pete Holmberg. Pete, you got anything to say, brother?
God, it's an honor and a pleasure to join you guys tonight.
All right, let's lock in for the action. It's going to be a three-gun approach as usual. Bang, bang, bang. Okay? And the first thing we're going to touch on is super teams. And that's going to be a theme in all three segments. First thing I want to see is I want the athletes and the fans take if they're a net positive. My take on this was they diminished the quality of the game. Okay? They diminished the quality of the game. It turns it into too much of a players-driven league. And it takes away the street fight aspect style. Because you look at MJ's clarity of thought. His clarity of thought, his fearlessness, his grit and determination. He never was bouncing around teams trying to team up with his buddies. His buddies were his team. Let's start with Pete. I want to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, you hit the nail on the head there, especially bringing up Jordan's Bulls. The last highest viewed NBA Finals was back in '98. So it's clear the super team clearly is not good for viewership in the league and, just the competitive aspect. You can look at, Commissioner Adam Silver as the main perpetrator of that because David Stern was pretty strict on super teams. He vetoed trades, specifically the Chris Paul trade. And
yes, correct.
I'd like to see that moving forward to bring the competitiveness you talked about in the 90s and the 80s back.
Correct. Now let's hear some of the athletes' perspective. Bryson or Laz, who wants to start?
I'll go ahead and start it off. I think Peter, the thing I would ask you is, do you think the competitive level back then was higher because of the super teams not being a thing, or just how guys carried themselves back in the 90s and the 80s? Because I think, when we look at the game today, especially in the regular season, I just don't see the same passion, that I even did in the early 2000s. And I can really say the same thing for all the sports across the board. And I think part of that is not just super teams. I think it has to do with, like social media, stuff like that. People are more clout chasing, so to say, than really just getting to the throwback type work. So that's my opinion on, on that competitive statement you just said. Matt, is there something you want to add to that?
Listen, I'm going to be very transparent with the posse, very transparent with General Gard, with Commander Shaw, and with Pete here. Gard came to me today and said, Laz, we're talking about super teams. Can you argue in favor of super teams? And I said, and I get it, he's running a business, he's running a show here, but I said, Jared, I can't do it. And I'll tell you why. I'm a public school guy, public high school. I'm all about homegrown guys coming together, right? And beating the crap out of private school teams. To me, that's your super team versus your homegrown team. I'll be transparent a step further. I don't know a lot about the NBA, but I think I can provide a valuable perspective. Give me LeBron leading a group of stragglers to the championship. Give me the San Antonio Spurs, Tim Duncan, right? That Spurs offense, that culture. Give me those guys. Give me Jordan. Give me his boys. I want to see them scrap out, win a title. Give me Jimmy Butler on the Heat. Those are the guys. I want to see those gritty guys get after it. And that's my take. Jard, back to you.
Laz, I love that take a lot. Here's what I'm going to say about that is I completely agree with what you said. I completely agree with what Bryson said, and I completely agree with what Pete said. What I kind of think is that those teams we talked about with MJ and even the Golden State Warriors, they were built through the draft instead of free agency where the players were just kind of texting each other like, hey, let's all meet up here. The Warriors were built through the draft minus the KD
up until
era.
2016.
Yeah, exactly. And then they kind of jumped in on the cabal, and we'll get to who's responsible for initiating the super teams cabal.
Well, can you blame them, Jordan? Can you blame them? I mean, they got to keep up with freaking, LeBron and all them trying to make these super teams.
Well, what I believe is that LeBron initiated the super teams, and then KD exacerbated it to a new high.
I look back to Dirk Nowitzki's Mavs as the last true championship. You could argue the Raptors in 2019, I believe that was, but even then, that was a big trade to acquire a superstar. I don't think there's been a legitimate, non-super team. And this is kind of going back to your point, Bryson, earlier about the competitiveness in the 90s and 2000s. Up until 2013 with the Mavs, there was still, no super team really. The Spurs, I don't count as a super team. They were homegrown. And that Mavs team had no all-stars other than Dirk Nowitzki. So that's where I look back to.
All right. What I kind of think is about that point particularly, and back to my point, what about KD and LeBron, is that when LeBron left the Cleveland Cavaliers to join the Miami Heat, it was to beat the Boston Celtics, right? When KD left the Oklahoma City Warriors, it wasn't to beat the Golden State Warriors. He just joined that team. That's why I think KD's move was significantly weaker than LeBron's move. Does anyone disagree with that?
LeBron James joined a Miami team that was not, they had won the championship in 07 and 08 with Shaq, but they weren't a team that was, they weren't a perennial finals NBA team. KD joined a 73 win team.
Yes.
So
he joined a train that was already freaking full steam ahead,
Right.
Yeah.
And you see that in his character now, requesting a trade from the Nets and putting the number one seed in both conferences as his two trade destination. So I think that's definitely about the character of players today, that they're not looking to grit and grind it out like they did in the 90s. KD's looking to be successful and he's looking to build his legacy. And I think that's just a soft move. I think he could get it. He could have gotten it done in Oklahoma City. They had all the pieces there, but he chose the quick route in Golden State. And I don't respect that or any of his rings for that matter.
Yeah.
Jard, going back to your question, are super teams bad for the sport, right? Yeah. I mean, if you look, I mean, they don't always work because the culture that they build in these places doesn't work. And, you look at like the Boston Celtics, like they're not a super team. They're kind of that team I was talking about earlier, who just has a great culture, put the pieces together. Everyone knows their role and they play fucking hard. I mean, you could even, I guess, make that argument like the Warriors, they've Steph, but the other guys in their squad weren't necessarily superstars, but you saw super teams crumble this year, like the Nets and the Lakers. So
real quick, Matt, just kind of hitting off that. Like I said in the episode last week, I said you can have all the pieces you want, but if you're not going to put in the work, then it ain't going to matter. You're not going to get it done. And I think what you just said is exactly right. I think we saw that this year, and I think that's starting to become a trend. I think you're seeing a lot of teams. You get all these guys, even in the NFL, other organizations, they're not performing like they should, and it's because they get all these pieces and they think they can just roll it out there, walk on the court, walk on the field, and get it done. And then they run into a bunch of young guys on another team, a young, hungry team, and they just punch them right in the face, and it catches them off guard, in my opinion.
Gard, I have a question for you. You pointed to LeBron as the start of the super team. Can we look at Kobe Bryant on the, I believe, 2012 Lakers signing Steve Nash, Dwight Howard, Paul Gasol was already there, but he was acquired by trade.
Yeah.
That was far from a homegrown team. What do you think is different about that team that brought in, 26 combined All-Star appearances versus
That
LeBron's
that
squad?
team I remember was an epic failure. That Nash Howard Lakers
Correct.
squad, but I'll go even back.
Nash didn't suit up for them.
Oh yeah, Nash didn't even suit up. But I'll go back a step further. I think the first big super team that I've seen in my generation of watching the NBA is probably the Celtics team, Garnett, Pierce, Allen, that was built through free agency. Allen was at the Sonics. Garnett was at the
T-Wolves.
Timberwolves.
Yep.
So what I kind of believe on that is, and that super team, none of them were really the best at their positions in the league. They were all great. Garnett won an MVP a few years back. But that LeBron needed to join forces with D Wade and Bosh to beat that team. That was everyone's juggernaut in the East. Do you not agree with that, Pete?
No, yeah, I definitely do agree. That Cavs team did prove that they could go deep, though.
They did.
LeBron brought the 2017 or 2016 to the finals in his third year in the league. So I don't again, that could be seen as another move that he was trying to find a leg up on the Celtics.
But Pete, you got to remember in that Eastern Conference playoffs bracket, the Cavs didn't have to go through the Celtics because the Magic beat them, and I don't think that was a legitimate series, to be honest. When the Magic beat them, I think they got so lucky, the Magic.
Yeah, so that year they didn't have to beat the Celtics, and then he lost in 6 games in Boston.
Yeah,
games.
And that was the series.
No, you're right. He was running away from Boston for sure.
If you remember when they ended up beating the Heat, beat them in 2012 second round. LeBron and D Wade started crying together and embracing each other, and LeBron balled that his 2012 Eastern Conference playoffs, but then everyone knows what happened in the finals when he kind of wet the bed against Nowitzki.
Right.
All right. Let's get to segment number 2, and that's what qualifies a super team. What I believe qualifies a super team is not homegrown, built through free agency, and completely players driven. Does anyone disagree with that? If so, why?
Did you repeat that, Gard?
What I believe is that the super team, what qualifies a super team is how it is built, not just if there's a ton of star power on it. I believe super teams are built through free agency and not the draft. Does anyone disagree with that? What qualifies a super team in your guys' eyes?
I'd like to go one up on that. The players that they're acquiring through the draft, through free agency, they have to be somewhat in their prime. So you look at the Lakers squad this year. Are you really considering, Melo and Dwight Howard? 2 years back when they won the championship in Disney. Is that a super team because they have 2 stars and a bunch of old guys? No, I don't think that's a super team. I think that these guys have to be in their prime, like Kevin Durant signing or LeBron and Chris Bosh signing in Miami.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think you got to distinguish between a super team and then what great players do. And great players elevate the games of those around them, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't necessarily make a team a super team just because you have a guy who's raising everyone's boat up.
Mm-hmm. Bryson, your take?
I agree with Matt and Peter said. I got really nothing to add on to that. I think they hit the nail on the head.
So, Gard, I have a question. Do you think that the Warriors team this year, because players like Wiggins were acquired through Kevin Durant's pieces that he brought in, do you think that's considered a super team? Or do you think
real quick, I'm not too familiar. I know Andrew Wiggins, but was he balling before he was acquired to the Warriors, or what exactly was his play looking like before he went over there?
He could. Yeah, go ahead, Gard.
Okay, I'll give my quick Wiggins pitch. He was one of the most touted prospects out of high school. Like him and Jabari
remember
Parker
that.
on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He went to the Cavs, got traded to the Timberwolves for Kevin Love the year LeBron went back. He played well at the Timberwolves, but he didn't really reach his full potential. He's really grown at the Warriors and kind of maxing out on his potential. One cool thing I know about him is he had freak of nature genes. His mom ran track in the Olympics, I believe, and then his dad played professional basketball overseas.
Yep. So Wiggins could always score the ball. When he was on the Timberwolves, he did average 20 plus in the seasons that he played there. It didn't lead to team success, and like Gard said, he was a touted prospect coming in, so he was a number one pick, and he didn't really live up to that. But this year, he definitely stepped that up.
100%.
But the reason I bring that up is, Kevin Durant was in the sign and trade when he went to Brooklyn, was traded for D'Angelo Russell, who was then moved for Andrew Wiggins. So Kevin Durant's, legacy on the Warriors, or not legacy, more like the ghost of Kevin Durant is still living on. He's still a part of that team in a way.
I have one question for Bryson specifically.
Let's hear it.
As the athlete, KD left the Warriors because he said in a way the championships weren't as meaningful as he thought they'd be because he had already joined such a stacked team. This guy then in the regular season, Draymond Green says to you, "Leave, bitch, we won without you." And now he's requesting a trade back to the Golden State Warriors. As an athlete, what does that say in the locker room, sir? Your take?
I mean, I just don't think I could trust him. Like, honestly, it's like, is this guy going to, as soon as stuff isn't going how he wants it, is he going to, pack his bags and start shopping himself for the next team? No, I don't know if he's a guy I want in my foxhole, that's for sure. So I'll put it like that. I've had problems with him leaving, coming back, no stability. I think it shows a character flaw. So like I said, I wouldn't want to go to war or have him in my foxhole with me.
I mean, he's just eating out of Draymond's kind of dog bowl at this point. Like he's just saying, Draymond, please let me come back. And it's just like, bro.
Here's what I'll say about Draymond. I think Draymond brings a certain edge to that team. I think
100%. He's old school.
I think he's
He
important
played
to
at
that
Michigan
team's
State.
success. Even when you see him struggling shooting the ball or whatever, not playing well, I think just the overall edge he brings. I mean, that energy will drain throughout the team. It will lift your teammates up. And so I think, when he tells a guy like KD, basically to F off, I think that shows who Draymond is.
Yeah.
I think they like that.
Hey, Gard, can I bring in a surprise? Gard, can I bring in a surprise guest real quick?
Yes, of course.
We got Sam Hanley here.
Sam!
What up, Gard?
Bro. Hey, boys.
What's going on, man?
We're going to have a lot of the Penn Lacrosse guys on. I gave you time to Vusa. I gave you Matt Palazzi. We're saving the guys like Hanley. Okay? But stand by. This is just for starters.
All right.
All right. So back to the discussion at hand. Bryson, how much time are we at?
We're at 20 minutes.
Okay. All right, fellas. I think we're going to wrap it up around here. We
can keep it rolling.
This audience got the whole perspective on super teams.
Is there?
Okay.
Did you hit your final question yet, or no? We can hit it real quick.
Well, the final question is, which I think I touched on this, and we can just see if anyone disagrees. But I know I said the Celtics and the Lakers were example of kind of these baby super teams because the Celtics, none of them were really the best at their positions, but they all joined forces. And then the Lakers were just a complete and utter failure. So we're just going to ignore them, that super team. But I hold LeBron James sprouted in a young Kevin Durant's mind that it's just okay to join the best team in the league. He was like, okay, well, LeBron did it to the Lakers. Let me just up the ante. Does anyone disagree with that LeBron's mainly responsible for this?
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it is to a different extent. I definitely think that guys today are doing it on much worse extents. But yeah, I guess he was the the initial player to do it.
Okay. That's that in the Wednesday night sports talk Octagon. B Shaw, you got any closing words, bro?
No, I think that was great. I love talking to you guys, getting to know you. I think LeBron. One last thing I'll say is I think LeBron has gone a little bit not a little bit, a lot of it Hollywood. So I think he should have stayed in Cleveland, stayed in his city, and put on for the town. But that's just me.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
All right, fellas.
Awesome.
All right,
Thanks for
peace,
having
boys.
us on, gents.
No
good.
problem.
Of course, Pete.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks, Gard. Thanks, Bryson.
Yep, no
Yo,
problem.
peace, laws.